John chapter 8, verse 7 reads, "So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her." What we have here in the beginning of John chapter 8 is the story of the adulterous woman who is accused before Jesus. And what's being done here is the religious leaders are trying to get Jesus in a catch-22 situation. And Jesus really does an amazing flex. He does a power move that you could really only expect from him, because he's been kind of in this scenario before where he's been questioned by the religious leadership. And there's a lot that we can learn from this passage, the way Jesus responds and the way those who are against him respond as well. And we see in John 8:1, it says, "Jesus went up unto the Mount of Olives, and early in the morning he came again into the temple, and all the people came unto him, and he sat down and taught them." And so you have Jesus in a very public forum. He's teaching the people in the temple area, and so this is a situation where Jesus isn't in private, but he's very much in public, so it's the perfect place for the Pharisees and the scribes to make an attempt to expose him as a fraud and try to damage his reputation, something they're going to attempt and, of course, miserably fail at, which they do over and over again. In verse 3, it says, "And the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery, and when they had set her in the midst, they said unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery, in the very act. Now Moses in the law commanded us that such should be stoned. What sayest thou?" Now this is actually a very intelligent move on the part of the scribes and the Pharisees, because what they're doing is they're trying to catch Jesus in a scenario where no matter what he does, he's going to end up looking bad. Because if Jesus stands up and goes, "Yeah, that's right, stoner, executor," right in front of everyone, that's going to sour his reputation in the view of all the people that were there that he was teaching. But then again, if he stands there and says, "Nah, just let her go," that shows that he doesn't care about the Old Testament law, which is also going to sour his reputation. And so they think they have him here. And it's actually very interesting, a few things you look at. If you look at verse 4, where it says, "Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act," that's kind of fishy in and of itself, because you'll notice that being the case, they only brought the woman to Jesus. They only accused her. And last time I checked, it takes two to tango. Adultery is not like a solo behavior. And so it's like, where's the guy? If you caught her in the very act, now there's two ways to look at this. Either somebody saw what was going on, reported it, and then the authorities acted on it, or the authorities happened to see it all happening at the moment. And so either way, you should have some idea who the guy is. So why is the guy not here with her? So that's a little fishy. Plus, if they did happen to catch it in the act, I mean, that is some pretty precise police work. So it all kind of smells a little bit like a setup. But then again, what you see Jesus do is an amazing power move. Verse 6, "And this they said, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground as though he heard them not." Now, did Jesus hear them? Did he know what was going on? Of course he did. He understood the scenario. And one way that you and I can start to control a situation, if you want to seem powerful, a great thing to do is not follow the natural flow of discussion. So sometimes we feel like we have to answer a question. Sometimes we feel psychological pressure to just follow social protocol. And so that would be what they're trying to do here. They gave him a direct question. They centered him out in public, and they're like, this requires a certain response. And Jesus doesn't go along with that. Jesus just acts like they didn't say anything to him, and he just starts doing stuff on the ground, and they're like, what? Because you can control things better if you just dictate what happens next. And then we see this, they continue to press him in verse 7. "So when they continued asking him, he lifted himself up and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her." And this is a very deep statement as well, because remember, there's a group of people there that he was teaching, and then there were those who brought this woman claiming that they'd caught her in the act of adultery. and they thought they'd got him stuck in this situation. And he says something that I believe is directed at those who brought her, saying, if you've done nothing wrong in this scenario, by all means. If you're above board as far as what is occurring here, you go right on ahead. So if you think that there's no means to accuse you in this situation as well, then by all means. Jesus, knowing full well that something was up, knowing that this was an illegitimate situation, and that honestly, if they were to do that, they would be committing a crime in and of themselves. But also this has the idea of, we're all sinful, and don't get the idea that you're better than other people. Now, don't get me wrong, society has to function, so we need people in the law enforcement plus the judicial branch who are making decisions based on this. But this whole scenario was an absolute crock. Jesus knew it, and he knew they knew it. So he says, okay, fine. You want to really commit to what you guys are doing, and you don't think you've done anything wrong, you go right on ahead. And in verse 8, and again he stooped down and wrote on the ground, and they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. When Jesus had lifted up himself, and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? She said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. Jesus knew that she was sinful as well. It's very possible she did, in fact, commit this sin, or he could be referring to the fact that she was just a sinner just like everyone else who was in that crowd. But the point was, they tried to catch Jesus, but Jesus was well aware of what they were up to, and he wasn't going to fall for it. This was a manufactured scenario. God saw right through it and acted accordingly. God recognized the sinfulness of all people. He also recognized the sinfulness of those who were involved in the conspiracy. He exposed it, and then he showed how forgiving he was, not only of the woman, but also of the crowd, in allowing them to leave despite their sinfulness as well.